This is all great. Now, where does QA really play a role, and what is that you really have to do here in this kind of scenario is, now introduce a concept of real-time performance monitoring and measurement. So what is this real-time performance monitoring measurement going to do for you is, look at your hosted, internally hosted applications and look at your cloud hosted applications. Whatever the key characteristics you are looking for. So what are the key characteristics we are looking for? We are looking for elasticity, scalability, security. I didn't want to actually detail them because this literature is available for you. I don't want to be redundant as a speaker. So when you really look for all of these key features, I'm sure you can find abundant literature. So, if you are new to cloud, all you have to do is just pick each one of them and then Google it. You'll find what that means, and then you have abundant literature on how to test cloud. Because this session is not about how do I test cloud. This session is much more beyond than what you should look for. Okay. So these are the features which I'm looking for. Okay. These features I'm going to address and I'm going to test it in my real-time performance management. When I address them, now you have to answer from a QA point of view. First of all, you should develop a framework and you should answer yourself that, are my results the same? Okay, are my results the same? That is the first point. If my results are not the same, then go back and check, did I lose myself in my risk assessment? Like, one of the results can be, I thought that it is going to be cheap, but it is not as cheap as what it appeared. It can be, breaking your cost, or all of this, okay? So, all of these, you have to actually put it into your model, because the reason why you would do all of that in your modeling is, it is easy to change things when you are at a design level, okay? Because after constructing the house, if you try to change the parts, you know how expensive it is. So when you model these things, you have to model all of these factors. You have to put together a framework from a QA point of view. Only QA can think on what can go wrong. Rest everybody will think on how to make it happen. QA is the only team who can think, how can it go wrong and how can I save my company, X amount or Y amount of dollars, and how can I continue to prove the value of QA and the value of QA being independent, okay? So make sure that you do the comparisons between, first of all, look for as-is versus realistic performance, and let us say that in your modeling, all of that, becomes 100% and all the promises are reality, okay? Let us say that is a good thing. Now, the second aspect of it is, now, how do you put together a journey to move this percentage into the cloud? Let us say that you have done all of your homework correctly. You don't stop on just real-time performance monitoring and measurement. Now you extend it on saying that in the next 12 months or in the next 24 months or in the next 36 months, how is the journey? And what are the different things I have to do in order to make sure that I am moving them in a right, systematic, structured, process-oriented way on cloud adoption. That journey is your cloud modeling. Okay. Once that is done, then obviously the next path is migration. Yeah, I've done my homework, I know what I'm doing, move the things to cloud. Then the certification and validation. So that is where this team comes into place, where you're going to actually test all of them based on a certain set of SLAs and then based on certain set of tools and governance, okay? And then obviously there will be some training for the end users on, okay, things have changed guys. Now, in the new environment, this is how you have to access things. And then there is a rollout process. And when you do all of that, how is this done? The journey from risk assessment to migration is typically done by a service provider. Okay, this entire journey is done by a service provider who call themselves as a cloud enablement provider. So there is a service provider, there is a service integrator. The service provider is somebody who's actually giving you the infrastructure or who's giving you that particular service. The service integrator is somebody who's actually implementing that for you. Like for example, Accenture, Infosys, all of them, they can be a service integrator. But if you look at like companies, CSC or Accenture also is a hybrid integrator where they have both infrastructure and also they have their own services also, like that. So you have a hybrid provider as well, who's an overall service aggregator as well. Now, they are the people who are driving this part of it, but Today, in most of the companies, they are owning even this part of it also. So, because the cloud migration deployment is a gray area, because there is not a lot of expertise available in the market, naturally what happens is, these people are actually taking this chunk as well. And then what will happen in that case? Independence is gone, right? The whole concept of independence QA is gone, because somebody who's put together the model, after implementing, are they going to come back and say, hey, I'm sorry, I did a miscalculation on that? Is that going to happen? No. They'll only put another business case on why we had to do it. It is not that what you wanted, it is this what actually it's giving, and you'll have a lot yada 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 blah 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 blah. But it's too late, right? So first of all, this I recommend that you should have it a complete independence, complete freedom to verify on all of these aspects, and then you do it. And this itself is a struggle today, but I'm taking it now to the next level of should we just do only V&V, because you are entering here. Okay, if QA enters here and then let's say that they say that hey, scalability is a concern in this solution, beyond 1000 we start choking, because it's not so much about the cloud, it's about look at this again. There is one application in house, okay, then there is one application in cloud. I have a bottleneck here. How is cloud is going to solve that problem for me, right? It's a bottleneck between my current application infrastructure and the communication between my second application. That's not going to be solved. And let us say as a QA partner or as a QA team member for your company, you have pointed out that scalability is an issue. You're too late in the game, right? It's already done. Now all they have to do is, now let's say, how do I find solutions on? Either I move this here, or you'll start getting a bandage solutions of make this pipe bigger, or there'll be a lot of workarounds of can I do some asynchronous transactions between I do something here, I do overnight batch jobs, it's not needed that real time, and then a lot of solutions will come. So answer all of you yourself that do you really want to do just V&V when you are too late in the cycle, or do you want to do more, right? My recommendation is that we should elevate ourselves beyond V&V, okay? So what is that you should do? First is get involved early on in the life cycle, and then try to do a cost benefit analysis. As a QA expert, as I told you about the modeling, so try to do cost benefit analysis. How do I do it? Simple. There are enough cost modeling exercises, examples available. Take a look at them, and the only recommendation is put a 5-year roadmap to it and really answer yourself that in the next 5 years, how is your capex versus opex looking like? Okay, you would put your company growth plans, you would put your consumption rate, you would put your adoption rate, and also you would put what you would do if it has been in-house, and what was your maintenance. Putting all of these factors and designing a hypothesis will give you on what are your benefits on capex versus opex in the next 5 years. And if you truly see the benefit, the recommendation is at least 3 to 5 years, guys. Okay, don't put a 12-month journey. 12-month journey always looks hunky-dory. When you put yourself for a 3 to 5 year roadmap, then you answer yourself a lot of questions. Okay. Cloud model assessment, I've already told you. Baseline the initial model, perform risk assessment, and do a strong SLA review. We have spoken about that. The third most important aspect of it is the exit strategy. I told you, right, when I was speaking about SMBs initially adopt cloud, but does anyone think about an exit strategy? What if later I want to move things back from cloud into in-house? Have you really prototyped your exit strategy well or not? Or, a lot of times the irony is, in fact, you should Google the articles and see, a lot of cloud hosting providers don't even provide you an exit strategy. They don't even provide, and they don't talk about it. That means you are typically locked in for them for the rest of the life. And the second aspect of it is, in the exit strategy, okay, it need not be about, just locking in with them. So the point related to that is a vendor lock-in and data ownership. Today, let us say that I am on Amazon Cloud, okay? Now I want to migrate everything onto Google Cloud, or I want to move it into a Microsoft platform. None of these people work on any OSLC standards, or they don't provide any open platform standards. Everything is proprietary. Now when everything is proprietary, you will have a nightmare if you have to switch a vendor. So when everybody is not working on an open software lifecycle platform, then obviously when you move and when you go into a particular vendor, you are locked in for your rest of the life. So talk about exit strategies. Think about vendor lock-in and data ownership. SMBs again typically run with the challenges of budgets and everything else. Let us say that I can't pay for the next 3 months, but after that I know that I'm going to get the money. Is any of your cloud provider going to wait for that strategy? No. What will happen to my data? Okay, forget about the application. Okay, application, I'm using a SaaS model and I have all the data. Greatest example on that is Salesforce. How many of you are familiar with Salesforce? Have you heard? Okay, good chunk. So when you look at salesforce.com, it's a great CRM platform where you can track your sales and everything else, which is all great. But let us say in future I want to move away from Salesforce and I want to go into a different application. How easy is it? It's a nightmare. It's a SaaS platform. You customize the SaaS according to the business workflow, whatever you need. Everything is great. But what if one day I decide that I want to move away from them, and for whatever the reason I have something in-house? It's going to be another 1-year project for you to move your data into the source what you want. So you really have to think about your exit strategy very well. Okay. The next one is data reminiscence. What is this one is? See, in cloud, the most common thing what happens is infrastructure gets repurposed. Because what is the promise of cloud? You pay only for the duration what you need, right? After you are done, then who gets it? Whoever is the next one, they get it, right? So let us say now today I go in and I want some infrastructure. Okay. Once you pay for the infrastructure, then that is for you for that duration whatever you need, right? What if I go there and then I start using some tools? I'm sure all of you know that even if you format a hard drive, you can get the information back. Correct or not? There's a particular standard and there's a particular way you have to actually do media sanitization. If you don't adopt to that strategy and if you do not do it, then just simple formatting is not going to help. So what if someone has used the applications or somebody has used the infrastructure and now you take that infrastructure and if you start looking at it, sometimes you might get all confidential information, right? Who's thinking about security breaches? So that's a major issue because for performance testing you might use a cloud strategy and you just adopt it and you put in all the realistic credit card numbers and you're done and then you're out. Then next company takes over that infrastructure and then you start doing it. It's a huge challenge. So you have to make sure, or at least you have to ask your cloud provider that, hey, after I'm done, what is your media sanitization policy? How many of us have asked or how many of us have thought about it? So it's important to really think on those lines. If you think that your data is critical, if your data is not critical, then that doesn't apply. But that has to be a thought process. Security. Okay. Everybody, when they move on to cloud, the first biggest aspect of it is security, because now the data is not in my control. I'm hosting it on a third party. When you host it on a third party, obviously you want to make sure that it is secured and it is fine and everything. We do all the testing around penetration, we do firewall testing, we do all of the testing, whatever we do there, when it comes to entering into the boundary, entering into that peripheral and accessing the application. But how many of us are really testing the security on the co-located apps? Let us say that in that virtualized platform you have 3 or 4 applications. Your application is not there, but the other application has compromised on their security. So when you have your apps co-located in the same infrastructure, are you really testing for data security issues on the co-located applications? And if you're not, then that's a point you have to worry about. So these points are way different from what you would approach in a typical cloud strategy of verification and validation, where I'm only talking about the key benefits of cloud. It's much more beyond. You have to really look at all of these 6 data points, and when you are able to effectively communicate this information back into your senior management, then guess what? Where would you really stand, or where would QA operate? QA wouldn't operate anymore here. QA would start operating at a ROI level, because now you are elevating yourself from doing a mere V&V all the way to being the best friend for your CIOs, to the CFOs. You are invited onto the CIO platform where you are participating in business discussions, you are participating in business analysis, and you are really elevating yourself all the way here. Okay? So that is the genesis of this. The next is understanding the hidden cost of a cloud migration. Okay? So cost of bringing services back in-house due to a regulatory change. Sometimes it has nothing to do with cloud benefits or something. Suddenly, see, people who are working in regulatory industry, either financial services, banking, healthcare, insurance, they all can relate to a regulatory change or how crazy they can be. On an average, for any industry in a particular financial year, just in North America, you can expect as many as 2,000 to 3,000 regulatory changes bombarded. And every single business unit, all they do is every single month or every single week, when they get this set of regulatory rules and changes, they study them and then they start understanding what is in store for me or what changes I have to do, and they continue to do that. So suddenly, regulatory change is coming and saying that, you can't put your information on a public domain. It's just not possible. Then, what is my cost of moving the data back? Then cost of implementing and operating countermeasures to mitigate risk. We all don't think about risk because when they say 99.99, when we say we believe in it. How do they provide a 99.99? Let's talk about, I don't know how many of you have followed the news of, in 2008, there was a cable disconnect between, Asia and, North America, and we have seen, all of us have seen, huge outages. That was one of the rarest incident what happened where the backup line also was, screwed up. So when you have your main and your backup gone at an ISP level, then what is your risk mitigation strategy? There's nothing apart from taking a business plan. That is why I tell people that cloud adoption is a good strategy, but is infrastructure really that sophisticated enough, that foolproof enough where you can rely on it? The answer is still questionable because we have good number of incidents. All you have to do is just simple Google on how many outages are you seeing at a infrastructure, at a network level, and at a continent level. You will see almost pretty much every day there are some outages. You will see a lot of maintenance happening. With that kind of a maintenance, how much are you willing to really move into cloud? And it's not foolproof. And if somebody says, I'll be very surprised. Then unexpected expenses involved in initial migration of systems, because if you do not do your cloud modeling well, if you do not do your cost estimation well, if you just go on what your vendor says or what your ISP says, then obviously you are going to get into a lot of unexpected expenses. Are we prepared to it, or have we put together some budget to it? And unexpected expenses can be, again, as I said, I have to suddenly now develop an integration between my applications to communicate effectively. That is something I did not plan before. So be prepared for that. Loss of internal IT knowledge providing competitive differentiation. Because once you move to cloud, obviously what are you looking for? Cost savings. When you look at cost savings, obviously you lose the people. But anyway, given the IT industry commodity and thanks to our number of engineering colleges, I think that is something we'll never worry about, right? Once you lose someone, already there are 10 people always available in the line saying that, I know exactly what you want, right? That's what we present ourselves in the interview, correct? So I think that is something people feel in America where, they just work. I remember a company actually, I used to, that was one of my clients. So for them, it's a large insurance company in California. They have different levels of parking, and then they have parking outside also. If you work for the company for 35 years, what they get is parking in the first floor. I'm serious actually, and they take it with pride and they feel that as a very good perk. And I've seen in another airline company also where actually their parking is probably easily half a mile. Actually, center is the office and across is the periphery. And then when they are working for 40 years in the company or 25 years in the company, then they get the parking in the first row. Their name is printed and they get it in the first row. And they take a lot of pride actually in being there, and they count, another 7 years to go for me, then I can park here. So that talks about the stability, and they're not jumping jobs like here in India where every year on year, as soon as there is an appraisal, then we look at like my hike is not good, is my resume ready or not? So then the next is like lock in with specific cloud provider or proprietary service model. I've already explained that. What are your disadvantages on that and what happens in that? Okay, now let's go into testing. Okay, I don't want to talk about any of these because this is not a conference around SaaS. There's not a conference around infrastructure. If I'm in a VMware conference, then maybe I'll talk about infrastructure or a platform. We are into testing conference, so let's talk a little bit on testing as a service, right? When we have all of them, and why not testing as a service? Okay, so what I'm going to address here is in testing as a service. Okay, what services under the testing umbrella can go into cloud enablement. Okay, the first point is what services can go into cloud enablement, how do you implement them, and actually when to determine that. That is what we have in our next slide. Okay, so probably I think we are running out of time, so probably I'll try to close this, and I want to give some questions also, not a monologue. So when you go into testing as a service and when you really want to do a cloud enablement, what are the different services you can go? Okay, the first one is test tools licensing and provision. You'll be amazed to see that when you look at an enterprise organization who are geographically distributed and they are available all over the globe, then you will see that the enterprises have deep pockets of spending and the left hand doesn't know the right hand spending. And I've been into several business cases with the CIOs and CFOs of these large enterprise companies where we have put together a 2 million, 3 million cost savings exclusively on enabling cloud on their tool licenses. It's a huge benefit for them. At least the non-functional testing licenses like load runner and everything else, when you actually move them onto cloud, huge cost savings. Okay. The next one is mobility services. Okay. So probably people who use iPhone or who are Apple fanatics or probably any other phone also. What is the age of a phone? In the smartphone era, and you see it. How many of us are using iPhone 1 or iPhone 2 or an iPhone 3? Or probably after 1 year I'll ask how many of you have an iPhone 4? Right? I mean, what happens is when you really look at a mobile device, the average depreciation on a device is actually 50%. Because I bought a Samsung Galaxy 2 for my wife, and then just last week when she was going around, you still have a 2. 3 is already out in the market, and I bought it this January, and already in September people are talking that is stale and old. As soon as you see a new phone in the market, or the most funniest video I've seen is after the Apple iPhone 5 was launched, one of the American surveys was they just took the iPhone 4 to the people who had iPhone 4, and then they asked, hey, this is a new iPhone 5, how do you like it? And then they look at it, wow, this is light. They've seen the news, right? Wow, this looks much faster. Yeah, I think I have it, but this looks a little bit taller. So the perception of the mind is as soon as you find something new, then instantly, you start appreciating the features, whether you like it or not. You want to be hooked up into the latest era of, have the new gadget in hand. Okay, I've seen even my own friends that they finally show, at last this is in my hand, like they have just their hand and the phone on the video and the face. I say like how much of a difference, or how much of the world has changed for you? Or even I'll question them, do you really know what are the new features or enhancements you have in iPhone 5? And the answer is back to the same video where 80% of the people didn't even distinguish what is the difference between 4 and 5. 4 and 4S is even horrible. But from the mindset point of view, when you really see so many phones coming into the market, the average span or the depreciation what you write off on a device is 50%. 50% year on year you have to write off, because in 2 years the device becomes stale. Like iPad 1, it doesn't support iOS 6 anymore. It is only limited to the previous iOS. So even the companies are also smart enough to cut down the features and force people to buy their new products again and again. So in that era, if at all you are able to adopt a cloud service where you tell your end customer that hey, you don't have to invest on a mobile which is depreciating to you year on year and you have to write off so much. I have cloud enabled devices, like companies like Device Anywhere, Perfecto Mobile have already implemented that, and they already have these solutions. But as a company also, you can look at, if you are a service provider, if you are providing testing services for your end clients, this is a service where you definitely can go into. Then performance testing is another definite easy service which you can take it onto the cloud, because in a performance testing, when you are trying to do benchmarking, when you are trying to do baselining, or when you are trying to actually do performance testing, where I do not know what my application can support and I really want to do the maximum and see where application starts breaking. In those cases, in all of those scenarios, infrastructure was a bottleneck. When suddenly I have to move from 5,000 users to a 50,000 user test, then infrastructure was a huge bottleneck. I have to halt my testing, and I need another 1 week to make sure that I'm able to assemble the infrastructure. But now with cloud, that's a very great place where you can actually do performance testing. But what services under performance testing also can go on cloud? Load controllers, absolutely. You can set up your load controllers on the cloud. Load generators, your monitors and reporting engine, your real-time monitoring. Not only just your performance testing and monitoring. I told about your hosted on cloud and your real-time monitoring. All of that actually can go onto cloud, and you are able to continuously monitor what you are going to get as a benefit. Then on-demand test automation labs, because when you have huge automation scenarios and I need more machines in order to run it faster and cheaper, then you can go into on-demand automation labs. Then test infrastructure. Okay. Lot of times performance testing or any other testing was always compromising on production-like systems, right? How many of us had a testing system which was exactly mirroring like production? Did anyone have, or did anyone see that? Answer is no, right? We never have. We only have a scaled down version in testing. But today with cloud, you have that advantage of really replicating for the duration what you need, a production-like infrastructure in QA for that specific duration. And then if you have a solution on on-demand commissioning and decommissioning of the infrastructure, if you are able to create models on how I'm able to on a click of a button create this infrastructure with the right operating system, with the right web servers, with the right application servers, and with the right database servers. If I have that predefined, then obviously this is a reality, and then you don't have to compromise on their production-like environments. You can create them. Okay. So these are the top 5 valuable assets, at least I've seen in my experience, what you can definitely with confidence take it onto the cloud and promise your service providers or promise your end customers that yes, there is an absolute saving in that. Okay. Now the brainstorm session. Okay. So I think we had some cordless mics, right? So feel free to ask questions. I'm happy to share my experiences. Yes.
So you were saying cloud modeling, right?
If it's okay, just say your name and what company you're representing, just for the benefit of everyone else.
Okay, I'm Neeraja. I work for Access Resources as an associate manager.
Excellent.
So my question is, during the cloud modeling, you were saying that we should compare the results between the in-house and when we give it to the cloud.
No.
Yes.
No. What I meant is, see, if you look at it, I drew also. 80% of your applications can be in-house. Let us say you migrated 20%. It is not comparing, I have an application here and I have an application here. No. The comparison is, you have already existing set of application in-house. You have a portion of applications which are different from what you have in-house and you have put it on cloud. I'm looking only at the performance metrics of whether my responsiveness, my security, my scalability is exactly the same to my in-house versus my cloud.
But how will I know when I'm doing the modeling?
When you are doing the modeling, what you have to do is, let us say that you want to actually migrate 10 applications. Okay, you pick one application. Okay, let us say that you are going to Amazon.com. Okay, you buy the infrastructure and you are putting it. Amazon gives you at a much more economical rate, or any cloud provider. Take 1 month there and then you migrate an application and start comparing it. Because if you do not test it, why do you want to do a big bang approach of migrating everything and then start looking for the results? I'll tell you, even when we in-house developed a performance, so like at Signity, what we have is, we have a on-demand performance testing platform on cloud. When we actually developed it and when we said that it is ready for our end customers and they can use it, actually we have run a beta test for almost 3 months, where what we did is, we took load runner, we took JMeter, we took these performance test tools, and we had a controlled performance test doing with an in-house infrastructure and an application, and then we repeated the same test on the cloud, and we tried to compare, are the results correct? If the results are not correct, where are we seeing the differences? Is it because of network latency? Is it because we are not configuring correct? What are the different parameters? It took us almost 3 months to fine tune it and say, yes, now with confidence we know that our solution is correct. So that is what you have to do, prototyping and modeling.
One more question. Service-oriented architecture, do you think that will be more beneficial for cloud, on cloud?
It depends on what.
Also.
Yeah. It depends on what services you are trying to expose. Like for example, payment gateways. Okay, payment gateways generally are bombarded, and you wouldn't know, right, to what you want to go. So in those kind of distributed components and distributed infrastructure, absolutely you can go with cloud. But the only thing what you have to take care there from a testing point of view is, am I really testing them in the right fashion or not? Am I orchestrating my services in the right fashion or not? Am I looking at my security also when I'm orchestrating my services? Because services can be invoked in a business flow in how many ever combinations what you want, correct or not? So when you have your decomposed services like that, am I really doing my service orchestration correct or not? And if you have modeled that correct, why not? Okay.
Hi, I'm Suresh. I'm from Coromandel Infotech. So you said QA to be elevated to the next level. See, ideally in a scenario if you take, normally the QA doesn't get exposed to that level. Probably what you would get is like an email would be received in his inbox if they have been migrated to the cloud environment. Now it's your duty to test. Now, can you tell us a strategy to all the test engineers or like test leads? How do you get elevated? How do you get exposed to the CIOs and COOs level?
So very simple. So unfortunately, QA is a thing. I always tell people that QA is a thankless job, because when application is happening very well and everything, the designers, the developers, the architects go into the front place of the management and say I've put together the best design, I've put together this great model, see it is working perfectly, like this, and everybody gives a big thumbs up and says you guys made it. And let us say it goes into production and it bombs. First thing is, did we not test it? How did QA miss this? Right? The first question doesn't come as, why did the architect design it poorly or something? First question comes back as, have you tested it correctly or not? Correct or not? So QA is unfortunately a thankless job. So what you have to do is, first time when this happens, you actually go back and then do this analysis for one service or one application where you get an email inbox. Elevate their thought process by attacking one of these and then showing them what the challenge can be. Educate them, then they'll understand. If you do not do that, see, there's no first time, because first time, no matter how much ever you tell, they're not going to believe that. Because first of all, it's always about, even QA came through because once they experience the pain, then they say, okay, QA cannot be compromised, right? If let us say that the QA, effectively communicates that, hey, going into production, I'm not certifying this product, you put your neck on the line and sign off, because from a quality point of view, I know that this application is not correct, and then they still shoot it into the production. The next time, would that development project manager sign off on that?
Just wanted to add to what you're saying.
Yeah.
People were not believing Al Qaeda was a threat unless until they bombarded the
Yeah, exactly.
That's how the QA approach should be.
Yeah.
What I mean to say is that unless until you blast the system or application or the technology or whatever area you are working in, nobody's going to believe you.
So once you make them realize the pain, then only they'll see the value. Or they have to experience it, but when they experience it, what you guys have to make sure is you have effectively communicated the risks. If you did not document and if you failed to effectively communicate also, then you yourself are equally at fault, because you didn't visualize or you didn't communicate that there is going to be a risk. So it is important to actually do both, either of that. Because when you are given even at this phase, you can add enough value now to test and say whether it is accurately working or not. And when you show your differentiators, then obvious question is, why did we not think this before? Or they say, where were you all these days? Right? So, unfortunately you have to elevate yourself. Yeah.
My name is Archana from TCS. My question is that like we have a various service providers for a cloud like Azure and Amazon, but
There's a huge laundry list.
yeah, we know that cloud is nothing but a cluster of computer memories where we share. So can I create my own cloud where I can share my software available services and create a domain where I can share with a different project, which can reduce my costing, where each project has different revenue invested for a software and all. Is it possible?
The answer is yes, and that is what is private cloud all about. Actually, whatever you see, Amazon and Microsoft, all of them, that is a public cloud. Several enterprise organizations are moving into a private cloud because they don't want to trust anyone else. They create their own private cloud with a lot of infrastructure put together, which is shared across their own business units. It's absolutely possible.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add something? What I think the trend is actually what is also happening is along with the private clouds, enterprise are also actually kind of making the silos vanish by putting an inward-facing app stores. Just like you have an app store at the Apple Cloud, what companies are doing is they're defining custom-specific apps for a large enterprise by re-leveraging horizontally. So from a tester standpoint, it's also another opportunity for us when we leverage all the testing infrastructure, even when you consume that as an ID. So a private cloud is both, what you can do to cost reduce. It's also another opportunity to elevate and go back and say that, when you're sharing across all this XYZ that's happening. So, and then again, it went across stacks. You can go eucalyptus, you can choose a hybrid cloud, your stack independent. You said Azure to Amazon, right?
Hi Raj. Firstly, I'm happy I could resist the temptation of going home early. I'm Padma Swami, working for Polaris, and we're all from Polaris. My question would be, or I would want you to confirm the scope of verification and validation in cloud kind of environment is more on the non-functional side, more towards the non-functional where you do the performance or the security validation. Two, from a functional perspective, I am imagining a situation derived out of your explanation. If my bank chooses to host the interfaces on the cloud, external interfaces like Bloomberg or Swift or anything, and have the application in-house, from a functional perspective, that would be the only limited place where I may have to think about the strategy. Or is there anything else we have to consider in QA?
So the second fold, actually you answered your question on the first one, because when you actually migrate into cloud, so it's an interesting question folks, when you migrate everything onto cloud, do I have to only worry about my non-functional aspects of it, or do I have to really check on my functional aspects? So what you here see is all non-functional.